Hello. Thank you for listening to 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings. If you enjoy our program, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share with a friend. We're also self-supporting, so feel free to contribute to the channel through Venmo at Recovery Recordings 615. Please note that the views expressed on this podcast are solely our individual views and do not represent any official stance of any 12-step program. We are not affiliated with any specific recovery organization, and this content should not be considered as professional advice for alcoholism or addiction.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings Podcast. I'm your host, Paul. Today is Wednesday, September 24th, 2025, and this is episode 70. Let's see. You can reach us at our email address, which is recoveryrecordings615. That's plural, recoveryrecordings615 @yahoo.com. You can also reach us. We have a private Facebook page. It's 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings Podcast. Get on there and send us a request. We'd love to hear from you. Let's see what else. You can reach us on most of the, on a lot of the different platforms, Audible, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Sometimes it takes a few weeks for us to get those platforms updated, but there's still currently a lot of material on there. We have a lot of cool stuff coming up over the next couple weeks. Let's see, this upcoming Sunday, which is going to be September 28th, we have Jerry P. from Palouse, Washington, and Stephen T. from Nashville, Tennessee. We're going to be doing Tradition 2 on a series that we started. And then also next Tuesday, which is September 30th, we have Don L. from Bellingham, Washington. We're going to do an episode calling it Our Real Purpose. So I'm super excited about that. Tonight I've been waiting to get our next guest on the show for several months now, and we finally linked up and was able to make something work. And she's a busy lady in the fellowship. So and it sounds like a busy all over actually, just from our conversations. And we have Amy D. from Louisville, Kentucky. How you doing, Amy?
I'm doing great, Paul.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, can you hear me okay right now?
I can.
Yeah. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule. We just spoke for briefly, and you're a busy woman. Thank you so much.
I am. Life is full, man. Life is full. That's the truth.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love how Harold always says. He says you want to live a storybook life, right?
Yeah. My friend Maddie says my story is beautifully written.
Nice.
And I just love that.
Yeah. The busy speaking and busy. How's Louisville? I'm just curious. What's the recovery scene like in Louisville?
It's wonderful. It's electric. We have over 400 meetings a week in our city. And Louisville is it's a metro area, so there's a flavor for every taste here, and I love that. And the AA is friendly and it's warm and it's welcoming and there's plenty of it. So nice. I feel very fortunate to be in kind of this pocket of enthusiasm for recovery here where I am.
That's awesome. Yeah. How far are you from Bowling Green? How is it?
Couple hours from Bowling Green, but that's another great place for recovery. I tell you, we just did our state convention down there last year, and it was a great turnout. And they do a sponsorship rally down that way every year, and it's good too. And then also in Kentucky, we've got Northern Kentucky, which is just kind of south of Cincinnati. They sit side by side with the Ohio River between them, and there's good recovery up that way. Nice. So pretty much any direction you go in Kentucky, you can find recovery.
Yeah, that's all. Corey, what y'all's delegate, right? Guy named Corey, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've met Corey a couple times or once, and we've
got a lot of folks active in service in our service structure here that they do a great job. We're really happy to have the folks we do in the positions they're in.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. I haven't spent much time in Kentucky. I've been to Bowling Green. I've been to the sponsorship rally a couple times, several times actually, and I've always loved that.
Well, I invite you to Kentucky. It is God's country.
Nice.
So visit often. I think I've been all over, and I still think Kentucky and Tennessee, I'll give you that. Well, Kentucky and Tennessee to me are two of the most beautiful states in our nation. I love it. I love driving down 65, up 71, out 64. It doesn't matter. I love Kentucky and the people and the landscape and the bluegrass. I'm here for all of it.
Nice. Heck yeah. I grew up on bluegrass music. Yeah. My dad plays banjo. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Cool. So for the listeners, we're calling this episode "However," or "Our Own Conceptions, However Inadequate, Was Sufficient to Make the Approach." Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess let's start with just to get people to where we can have like a little bit of context. But so let's start a little bit with like your upbringing. You know, your relationship with God or whatever when you were coming up, like as a child, and start with that.
Yeah. So I was raised in organized religion, church on Sunday, and sacraments, and it was important. It wasn't just my nuclear family; that was my extended family, cousins, grandparents, aunts, uncles, on down the road. And so I loved the ritualistic part. I loved the smell of the incense, and I loved the ritual of it, the kneeling, the standing, the memorized prayers. I was always drawn to that.
Yeah.
I kind of struggled early on when I became aware that religion had a certain set of rules, and my mom had divorced and remarried, and that was against the church rule. And she wasn't like banned or anything, but she was no longer allowed to receive sacraments, or she could go to church, but she wasn't really seen in the church because of the divorce and the remarriage. And I didn't understand it. I was only 7 or 8 years old, but to me, I misinterpret so many things, and that's always my problem, right? Perception. What you say is not what I hear. What I see is not what. I mean, that's my struggle, and it was going on long before I ever got the drink. But for me, it appeared like that my mom, who I thought, was the best person, most faithful, loyal, kind, followed the rules person I knew, wasn't good enough, or had made an error so severe that she could no longer participate or come to God. And another confusion I had was that I thought that religion was like the voice of God, the representation of God, that there were, I lived a very sheltered life. I knew this one thing. So I didn't know the many paths to God or different religions, or that this was just one of many. Yeah. I thought it was the one and the only one. And so, I kind of thought, well, gosh, if my mom's not going to make it, I got no shot.
Yeah.
You don't believe the thoughts I'm having, and so there was this this beginning of this separation from power, right? This separation from source, this separation from God, that was kind of rooted in just a childlike confusion.
Wow.
But I would carry those ideas that I picked up at 8, 9, and 10 years old on into my adulthood, and for many years beyond that. So, just not getting it, man. I just didn't get it. And I thought, well, if mom's not good enough, I'm not good enough. And that kind of planted a seed that became a belief system that I operated out of for many years.
Wow. I can definitely relate to that. That's powerful. I love how you said right there was the beginning of the separation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can take it back to the very moment.
Wow.
That it happened. I don't remember, we have selective memories, but I remember the very moment when the church leader said to my mother, you know, this is when we get to the front of the church, you will cross your arms over your chest so that the priest will know to not give you the sacrament.
Wow.
And I remember my dad. I remember the smell. Like it was profound in my mind and in my memory. And looking back, how that day, that event began to kind of skew my vision.
Wow. Yeah. And I love how you touched on, like, this is just what we picked up. It could have had like a whole different meaning or whatever behind it. But that's to a 7 or 8 year old child. I mean, what do you got?
Yeah, and that's nobody's fault. And I don't want to cast any disparaging thoughts towards organized religion or what they were practicing or what they were doing, because that's not it. It was just that my perception and my understanding just kind of twist things up, man. And that and just not understanding, and so we kind of make our own decisions, and they're often wrong.
Yeah.
And when I get into recovery, that's when the invitation to kind of re-examine that and think, were you wrong? Is it possible that the 8-year-old made a mistake? But I get to go back and kind of re-examine some of these decisions that I made, confused, young, with no understanding, no information. But I will take that decision that I made without understanding, without all the, and I'll ride on that. Like I'll build a life around that. And it's like, wait a minute,
all the way to the end.
Right? Let's just. I'll tell you, we decide things, and this is unfortunate. I just make it up. I just make shit up. A friend of mine, we were stopping to pee. We're on a road trip, and she's got to pee real bad, and I got to pee, and we pull in, and we jump out of the car, and I beat her to the bathroom, right? And I go on in, and I don't hear her come in the bathroom. I'm like, that's weird. She had to pee like me. I leave the bathroom and she's standing there outside the door. I said, what are you doing? She said, oh, it's waiting for you to come out. And I said, there's like 8 stalls in there. She said, I decided there was only one and I waited for you. And we laughed and laughed. I'll stand outside a door and never open it, never knock, never look in. I just decide, and then I go with that.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just so symbolic of how we do that in our lives. I just decided that. I don't know why.
Yeah. No, it's funny. An hour before we just had this conversation, I was on the phone with a sponsee, and he started out the conversation. I get so mad at my doctor. They're always just trying to throw a pill at me. Yeah, he's talking about the cholesterol pill, right? And he was like, they're always trying to throw a pill at me. And I was like, well, let's talk about it, And we started talking about it, and I was like, did they offer, like, did they not suggest, like, any like diet and exercise? Yeah, but I was just being frustrated. Yeah. It's funny. It's like you always get down to the bottom. It's like, all right, I get it.
Yeah. I'm unwilling to comply. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that started early, and then there's a thing called confirmation bias, and confirmation bias means when I believe something, I start looking for things to support my belief, and I will ignore things that are contradictory to the belief I'm holding. And I think that from that moment at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, I began that confirmation bias that I wasn't enough. God didn't, I didn't measure up. And I just continued to kind of, it was never there wasn't a God. It was that I don't qualify. Because I felt like my mom hadn't qualified, and if she didn't qualify, I'm not even getting in the race, man. Right?
Amen.
She's like a saint. So, and just kind of started moving in the opposite direction, and just kind of did that. When my kids were born, I tell you what, when you have a child, that there is no way at that time, you could not return or revisit the idea of God. It's just impossible when you go through labor and delivery and this new life, and you look in that child's eye. There is something very spiritual that occurs in those moments.
Wow.
And so it forces you back into the conversation about God.
Wow.
Yeah. So in my 20s, I revisited that, and I found another organized religion. And by that time I'd grown up, knew there were other religions, so I kind of opened the door. But there's this yearning, there's this missing piece, there's this aching, because there is comfort in faith, and there is comfort in that relationship. And I think that we all crave that on some level.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. I love that. So when you had your first child, were you in sobriety at that point, or
No, I didn't even know what was wrong with me when I had the first one.
But still, the idea of God, like you really had to start questioning it.
Yeah, there's something just really magical that occurs, and there's this. I mean, it just it's the you're in line with creation when you especially as a woman, when you birth life, and they hand you that baby. There's just a profound love that you experience, and then when you look in that child's eyes, man, it's almost like you're looking in God's eyes. They're innocent, they're pure love, they're the world hadn't got a hold of it. That's a brand new soul, and it's just pure and amazing and remarkable, and you can't help but feel that and connect with that. And when you talk about the disease of alcoholism or addiction, that it is so powerful that it could rob you of that, because to me that was one of the most powerful spiritual, emotional, physical, everything moments is in the birth of these children. And I heard a lady say early in my recovery, alcoholism will steal motherhood from you. And I thought, man, because when those kids are born, there is no way. If you had walked in the room that day and said, you will be the one that hurts her, I would have said, you're insane.
Wow.
I'll take a bullet for this kid. I will protect and cherish this child forever. There's no way I would hurt her or in any way. But alcoholism, man, will rob you of those instincts to protect and care for your young.
Yeah. So let's talk about, so you've had this child, right? And I would imagine, you're already separate, we just talked about we got this separation from whatever's out there, right? And then, you have this profound experience having a child. And then even at that point though, still you may have an idea there was glimpses of my upbringing where I felt connected to God. I just couldn't keep it. Right, I just couldn't keep it. Right, and like what you just said, I didn't feel like I deserved it. I'd go back. I would go to, I'd go to a church service or whatever growing up, and even in my 20s, right, where I would just connected. I was connected. I felt something moved me, right, and I'd get home and my roommate would be up to the same stuff we always did. And, he'd be rolling a joint or something, and I'm like, no, I ain't gonna do it. Then I'm kind of salty because he's, even bringing it out around me, which is why wouldn't he, right? And then it was just finally I'd get so miserable I'd just give in and be like, all right, dude, all right, and it's just it compounds, it's all right, now I got even more of a reason why I'm not worthy, right? And
I always had I would oftentimes smoking weed or tripping mushrooms. I felt spiritual even sometimes in those times, but then I would seek nature. I would be out in the woods or, on a hillside watching a sunset or a thing. And I would have these, this oneness, this knowing. In the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it talks about looking up at the stars, these moments where you're just certain, and I feel like, God was kind of whispering to me and reminding me that he was there and he existed in all forms and sometimes I joke about it because I say, step 11, I've been chemically kind of seeking those experiences that we get in prayer and meditation and in service to others. And we are seekers, that's why we return to church, even if we feel ashamed or we go to prayer often, or we have these moments, we look for God, we look for that connection. Sometimes in our darkest hours, and sometimes in our highest highs. But I think just kind of recognizing that I had always sought that a God of my own understanding, where I was enough and I was loved and I was saved.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So then you get into recovery. Let's fast forward a little bit to, like for me, my personal experience was I come in, I really didn't know, like I didn't have any evidence in the beginning that I really thought God cared much about me. Right. And like, what do they say? I heard a guy once say he could and would if he was saw. Well, I thought he could, I just didn't think he would. That was my experience. Right. And right. So it was like, I had to have had to be like little moments, and thank God for my sponsor. He was like had such a gift at like I just trusted the man. Eventually, I got to a point where I trusted the man, and he pointed me always towards like maybe that's the hand of a loving God. Like we started forming these new concepts of possibly situations that were going on in my life. God may have something to do with, right? And so let's talk about like whenever you got into recovery, what it looked like on like your first beginnings, you starting to form this relation or, have a new relationship or, different new conceptions of God.
Well, I got sober the first time at 25. So, and when I got sober at that time, I returned to church. I ended up going back to just a Christian church in my neighborhood up the street. It was important to me that my children were christened or baptized or, somehow celebrated in a church family. Because even though I, kind of had that whatever experience, with my mom and stuff, I had been raised in church and in ritual and in practice. For me, I never thought that God didn't exist, and I believed in the strength and majesty of God. I believed that my children needed spiritual protection, and so I returned to church with my kids, and was involved in that in church for a while, and felt. I don't know, there was always like something between me and God, and it was either the preacher or the priest or the Bible school teacher or whatever. Like there was never a direct relationship. It was kind of like a guy I knew down the street, who did good things for people. If you were good enough, right? Right. And this thing that occurred when I got sober in 2010, was a very personal relationship with God, and it seemed important. I am so fortunate for the gift of desperation. And the gift, when you have been badly mangled, like you're willing to do whatever. And I'm that guy. I kind of came in here with like, what do you got? And how do I do it? I didn't balk a lot. But in the beginning, it was, I was in a homeless shelter, and that homeless shelter had a series of rules, right? And things you had to do. And my sponsor pointed out, that's a power greater than you.
Yeah.
It tells you what to do. It tells you what time to line up for meals, when to get up, what you got to do all week, and there was a surrender to just authority, just a generally good orderly direction, if it were good orderly direction. And then, I always, and the other gift I received besides the gift of desperation was I have always loved Alcoholics Anonymous. I've never not liked it.
Nice.
I think that what we do is sacred. I think that we walk on holy ground. You were talking about your sponsor, and I can look around, and in my life, I feel like God gave me his best.
Yeah.
He gave me the best teachers at the right time, in the right place, and the right examples. There's a guy, Scott down in Nashville. He says, I must be God's favorite kid.
Yeah.
and I think we can all say that on some level, right?
Yeah.
Because when I look at my life, and so for me, like your sponsor said, that might be the loving hand of God, or the hand of a loving God. I went through that homeless shelter program with a girl. She was a couple weeks or months ahead of me on the program, but we would all get together in the morning and do a morning meditation and say prayers. And she would pray, let me see with spiritual eyes and hear with spiritual ears so I don't miss you today.
Yeah, wow.
And I started doing that. I started, show me. And it worked. I started, it was like God was saying, look over here, pay attention to that, watch what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I began to kind of see the power of God in the women's lives around me and in conversation. And, I work with a lot of women in recovery through steps, and I tell them, I don't have to tell you anything about God. If you're willing, he will introduce himself.
Yeah. Amen.
And for me, that's what it's been. It's been this introduction over a period of time,
Wow.
It's remarkable.
You just reminded me of that. And it's funny because I get reminders quite a bit. My first sponsor used to say, coincidences are for people who aren't paying attention, right? And it's like, wow. And it's finally, I remember I was, the first time I really ever felt connected to something, right? It's like, wow, I'd always felt like I was just poor little old me dropped off in this lonely little world, and when I started, you get what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
So I started getting connected.
Say, right?
Yeah. And I was like, holy crap, it's everywhere, right? Like
it's everywhere.
Yeah. That's huge.
It's everywhere, and it's all day long. If you're paying attention, you'll miss it. But I still say that prayer, 15 years later, let me hear with spiritual ears and see with spiritual eyes, and that kind of show me and guide me kind of way. And now something interesting, as I moved through the steps the first time in that first year in 2010, I had spent 10 years out in the darkness. I had returned to use at 30 and didn't get sober until I was 39. And in that time, I divorced my husband. I abandoned my children. I had turned to prostitution, and I became homeless. Like it was just, the bottom fell out. The world opened and swallowed me whole. Today, I'm grateful for that. If I had, been able to do anything that looked like functioning alcoholism, I would probably still be drinking.
I hear you.
But
oh man, I get it.
Anything I could grab onto, well, at least I have a job, or at least I have a car. Or at least, I did none of that. There was nothing.
Me neither.
There was nowhere to stand. It was the annihilation of all things worthwhile.
Oh, I can relate.
And so that kind of, that's how it ended. I kind of, homeless and just spiritually bankrupt. I got real angry. I couldn't stand me, and I couldn't stand you. And I just grimy. Ralph liked to say grimy. I was just grimy. And I come into this program. I start working the steps with my sponsor, and I start looking for God, and I see him working for other people. But you're not sure, like, is this for me, right? But I can see it happening for you.
Yeah.
We're the last to notice, but I kind of held on to this belief that if it's happening for you, then maybe it's possible that it is also happening for me, right? Kind of that, just a little bit of willingness, a little bit of open-mindedness. But as I moved through the steps, I had a white light experience on step 7.
Wow.
And there aren't really words to sufficiently describe what occurs, but God met me, and it was it was an energy, it was a power, it was visible, and it filled the room, and I just began to weep. I mean, and weep like I don't know that I have ever or will ever cry and weep the way I did, and it wasn't it was so many things at one time. I can't say what it was. It wasn't sadness. It was surrender. It was just the end of me, and all my plans and designs and all my thoughts. And at the end of me, there was nothing left of me, and there was only God.
Wow.
And it just created that I just cried and cried and cried. And I was in this moment. I don't know how long, I don't know if it lasted 30 seconds or 30 minutes. Honestly, I can't tell you. I can tell you that the floor was wet with my tears, and to wet a floor with just your tears, there was some weeping, and it was profound, and something shifted in me. And my sponsor says it was an exorcism.
That's funny. It probably
and it
was.
may have been.
Yeah.
It may have been
Yeah.
because there was darkness. I could just feel the hand of God just pulling darkness like up out of my bowels, just up out of my gut. And there was this powerful hand or movement, and it was ripping darkness out of me, and I could see the shadows being pulled up out of me. I mean, it was just a crazy. I thought, I understand, why somebody would have one and be like, have I lost my mind? Like, that was insane. But when it was over, it had shifted, and I was convinced that God was real and He was concerned with me.
Wow.
And it changed everything about my relationship with God. It just really did. He intervened. There was an intervention, from God, and a direct contact with me, and in my most vulnerable state. I was just at the end of me. Step 5 just really kind of had me angry and upset, and I was mad at God. I was mad. I went into 6 and 7 angry. I couldn't believe that this ominous being, this loving and powerful God, would allow someone like me to move through life, because I'd seen all the harms I had done. I could see my mistakes and the pain I had caused. And I was mad. I was mad at God for allowing me to exist.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, I don't know. That sounds ridiculous. That's kind of how I went into 6 and 7 was, how dare you? You should do something about this, buddy. You got fools like me walking around down here just destroying lives and the warped lives of blameless children. And
wow.
You got to fix this, man.
He was getting us ready, huh?
Yeah, and it primed the pump.
Yeah.
Man, because at the end of me, and our original manuscript and Alcoholics in the 12-step program that I operate in, Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill had originally wrote that we will humbly on our knees in step 7, and they later took it out. But I felt like there was nowhere to go at the end of 5 and 6 but to my knees. It literally kind of drove down to my knees, the end of me, exhausting all my plans and designs. I mean, there was nothing left. That's the best I had. Was laying there in step 5. That was the best I had. And now what? Well, at the end of me, right? I'm ready to turn to a power greater than myself. But I didn't pick that up in step 2. I didn't pick that up in step 3. Right. We're talking later on down the road. And, when we're talking about 2 and 3, and we're talking about those initial movement towards God, it was just this willingness that I had, like, whatever, sign me up. I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I don't know what else to do. And, the group is good orderly direction, a group of drunks, my sponsor, the rules at the homeless, whatever it was. I was no longer running the show. That was the biggest part for me.
Yeah.
Just this kind of micro surrender, this kind of, surrendering to the process. But for me, the larger surrender came in 7, in that kind of white light experience that I had. And,
wow.
And then, just teeing it up for constant surrender, every day moving forward.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I had a pretty big surrender in 7 as well.
Yeah.
I also had a big one in 4. Like I was probably 5 years sober at this point, and like I hadn't really done, I'd done one inventory like years prior, and I didn't really do much with 6 and 7 at that point in my life, and we did what we knew how to do at the time, and finally, like I did an inventory, and like the hard truths that came out of that inventory was just like, holy crap!
Because
I came in, I'd walked into it with a solid case, you know what I mean? And like walked out of it like, holy crap!
Yes.
And then where my 6 and 7 came in was just like, like what you just said, like this is the best I have. Right? Like, this is literally
it's alarming.
Like start doing a nightly review after that and see how often the same stuff shows up. Right? It's like every day it was coming. Like it was like bam, bam, bam. Every time I was just selfish, inconsiderate, selfish, inconsiderate,
thinking of myself most of the time.
Right? And I was like, it's exhausting. I remember Charlie P used to say, he said his buddy, he was sponsoring a guy at one point that was like, Charlie, I just don't understand. I don't have this selfishness y'all are talking about. Right? I get that, right? Yeah, I get that. Yeah. And then like he said a few years later, he's like, when will this selfishness end?
It's like we're open. We see it. I've got girls that'll send me their nightly review, and then they're like, they'll check off no.
So in my defense, because I do the same thing, right? I did. In my defense, though, like it's funny that we're having this conversation because like I would check off no unless something major happens, right? Because I mean I'm always selfish, in some way.
Well, and that's the thing. We do not hold the corner on the market for selfishness. That's a human condition. The news is for us, it will die. Other people, I watch people, I'm like, you're just selfish, you're self-centered, but it's not going to kill them.
No,
it will kill me.
Yeah.
And so that's why I have to constantly be on guard for it. But I can see now, like when I do that nightly inventory, was I afraid? In my first fear inventory, I wrote spiders and snakes.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what that meant, fear, and and when I read the corrosive thread that runs through every fiber, I thought that's a little much. Because I was so blissfully unaware of my own fears and motivations, and it's like the longer I stay sober and we discover, discard, right? And we're constantly in this growth pattern. And I realize how many of my conversations, how many of my decisions, how many of my interactions, are all fear motivated.
Oh yeah.
Afraid of not getting something I want or losing something I have. Yeah. And in relationships with my kids, my husband, my money, oh Lord, my finances, just at fear of aging, and how those things kind of dictate and control how I'm presenting, how I'm showing up in life in different areas, because it's this fear-based kind of living, and they're mild. I mean, sometimes they're big deals, and sometimes it's just subtle.
Yeah, yeah.
But upon examination, I can go, man, that's a fear motive.
Yeah, which is funny that we're kind of leaning into this now, because this is actually walking into step 3, right? Which is like,
Yeah.
if you look at what, I remember whenever even the first 4 or 5 years I read that line that says, being convinced any life run on self-will could hardly be a success. I was like, come on now. Any?
At all?
What?
No success?
I didn't even understand what the difference was. You know what I mean? Like, I thought it just meant, well, then how are you supposed to live, right?
Yeah.
And
Who's going to make these decisions?
Yeah.
Well, and I tell you, as we touch on that inventory and that step 11, and we come back to this step 3, because there's a lady in Ohio that said she hit a bottom, 17 to 20 years. I forget exactly what it was, but she hit this bottom, and she thought she had a step 11 problem.
Yeah.
And so she would double down on the nightly review and the meditation and the prayer work, and took classes, came, I don't know, whatever, a shaman, I don't know. She was just off, and she was just convinced this separation was a step 11 problem. She said, and at the end of all things, she had a step 3 problem.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Because that step 3, that surrender, and really turning my will and my life over to the care of God. Do I trust him with this? And is he what all, we talk about pockets of agnosticism.
Yeah.
I'll give God this, but I'm going to take care of this part. Or I don't believe he will take care of this part. My business, my finances, my kids.
Yeah.
Or maybe, what if, and this is where I always come from, what if I don't agree with God's plan?
Yeah.
What if I don't like what he's doing? What if it's God's will that I go bankrupt? Am I supposed to line up for that? I'm supposed to be in a will, I'm supposed to be in a, can I trust this God that you're asking me to turn everything over to?
Yeah.
And that's where we get the difference between, can I trust this God with my most prized and precious things?
Yeah. Well, it's funny.
What if his plans are different than mine?
Well, you touched on it earlier briefly. Like, so John has, whenever we go through, when we're on second step, at the end of We Agnostics, there's like a blank part at the end of the page, right? And he says, all right, so if we're going to make a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of this power, right? Like, what is it? What does he need to look like in order for us to even think about following through with this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if he's up there, like, still keeping score on all the stuff Paul's done, and he's turned, he always uses the analogy of a love knob. I'm not sure if you ever heard him say that, but the better Paul does, the more God turns the knob up. But if he's
is it on a merit system?
Exactly. So it's like, if I still have those, if I have those old ideas, like, am I? You had said I ain't even entering. Like you'd made the comment earlier, I'm not even entering that game, right? So
I ain't even in the race. Man.
Nah, I ain't doing that.
I'm going to lose. I don't like to do things I'll lose. That merit system and that. It's crazy, but we have to find something that'll work.
Yeah. So we were able to make our own conceptions, right? And then, and then from there, like, it wasn't until, like, I'm a firm believer. I've never met someone, I don't think, that really understands the selfish, self-centered part for, like, probably at least 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
That's like a really actual understanding on what it really means, Yeah. Like, they may even be able to intellectually talk about it, or even share a couple little funny moments where they realize they were selfish or whatever. But then, like, I like what Katie says. Katie always says that for, like, the first 3 years or 4 years even, that it's really just about not drinking, right?
It's survival, man. I got to learn to walk without alcohol. I got to learn how to go to the grocery without booze, pay my bills, be in an argument, deal with a birthday, a holiday, a season. It's really just about, like, kind of learning to walk. What does life look like without booze, man? And I got to kind of train in that for a while. And that is the training ground, right? You hear people say my feet are trained, and that's learning how to be a member of alcohol. Alcoholics Anonymous said, is learning to speak the language of the heart, knowing what they mean,
like that.
they say things, connect to things. Like I've entered a whole new world.
Yeah.
And I've got to learn the language and the practice of these folks, right? Of these people that I'm teamed up with now. And that takes a while too. I think that's definitely for me. Selfishness and self-centeredness, I don't recognize it until I'm not in it, right? There's like this moment. So like when you're driving, 10 miles out of your way to go to the halfway house to pick up, 3 women who need a meeting but don't have a ride, and you take them to the good meeting, right? And that's another 6 miles the other direction, and then you take them home, and as you're driving home from that, you realize that just for a minute, you were thinking about somebody else.
Yeah.
It's like the absence of it is how you notice it. Yeah. And then that feeling when you're doing something altruistic for people that can't do, with expecting nothing in return, where suddenly you have genuine concern for somebody, a stranger. It's like on the other side of it, and the relief, it's kind of like, I don't know where I don't even know what it's comparable to, but it's like, it's only when it doesn't exist that you realize what a box it was, how tight it was, Wow. You get used to the pain, and then they pull the tooth and you're like, whoa, wow, this is better. Like, it's like one, but for me, it doesn't like happen, especially, 15 years, right? And nobody would expect it to happen yet, but it's not that it's gone. It's that I have these moments, these little precious gifts where I'm like, hey, there's a relief from it. Yeah. There's a momentary relief from it. And I love, it's kind of like, I'm exhausting. I wake up thinking about me. It makes me insane. I think, and the only time I get a break from the obsession of me is when I'm doing something with you.
Yeah.
And so then I begin to crave these moments of, Don Majors always talked about giving your full attention and love to the person in front of you. And he was so good at it, man. He was just gifted at this. Like, I would watch him from across the room talking to somebody, and it was like, there was just a magic. Wow. You could feel it all around you. He would be genuinely interested, and it could be somebody with 2 days sober with one shoe on, slurring out, drooling out the side of their mouth. But Don loved them, and he was giving them his full attention and his full love, and it was just like beaming into him, man. And it's a gift when you see people that can do that. But the only break I get from the obsession of me is when I'm in those moments, and sometimes on the way to pick the girls up, I'm still thinking about me. I'm thinking about how inconvenient this is for me. Sure. Yeah. Or what I would rather be doing. Yeah. Or my ego's telling me how great I am that I do this. Wow. I like to pat me on the, look at you. But it's still about me. But then the girl gets in the car and she's going on about her kids or the dog she left behind or whatever she's doing with. And suddenly my focus is on her for just a second.
Wow. Yeah.
And then I drop her off and go back to thinking about me. Yeah.
Judy, I did a podcast last night with Judy and Juanita, and Judy shared this story. It was just it was amazing. Towards the end of the podcast, she said that her and her daughter, had went out to eat one night, right? And she said they were sitting there like waiting on the table. I'm probably going to botch this, but I'll get the most of it, right? She said we're sitting there, and there was this lady that was sitting wearing this sleazy dress, right? Just it was just god awful. Like I couldn't believe she was out in public like this, right? And she's sitting there and in her head and her daughter went over to the lady and was like, "You look so pretty tonight," right? And Judy couldn't believe it, right? So they walked away, and she was like, "I can't believe you just told her that." And her daughter said she needed someone to tell her that she was pretty today.
Yeah.
And Judy was at that point realized that like she was just focused on her needs.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. Right. I mean, how often does that happen? Right. It's
all the time.
That line where it says our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depend on our constant thought of others and how we may meet their needs. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it goes
And
into the third step promises.
constant. Paul, it says constant. Like it's impossible. I can't constantly.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the third step, the third step promises where it says, what does it say? Established on such a footing, right?
Yeah.
We became less and less interested in our little plans and designs. More and more, I remember the first time me and John went through the steps, or when we went through the steps together. I asked him, I was like, I'd never asked this question before, but where I'm trying to find where it says hold on a second, where it said he provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed our work well. I was like, what do you think that means, performing his work well? Right? And we went over to page 77 and it said our real purpose is to fit ourselves, to be a legacy. It's like, wow. Yeah.
That's it. And I tell you, that's the hit, right? So the only relief I get from the selfishness of self-centeredness is when I'm in an altruistic moment with someone else.
Yeah.
And be giving them my full attention and love and seeing how I can be of service. And when I think about my conception of God and turning my will and life over to his care, and I say, build with me and do with me as thy will, his purpose for me is service to others.
Yeah.
And I love that promise. And I tell you, I have to, that's almost a mantra. He will provide our needs if we stay close to him and do his work well. I depend on that. I lean on that because it's the only shot I got. And so that's kind of where I'm banking the success, right? That it's not going to be something I seek out or something I develop or something that I do or some brilliant idea. It's going to be
it's so funny you said
from
that.
him because of, building myself to be of maximum service. Like that's how God's going to use us. He's going to use us to help others or to create or to, be a source of love and light and in a dark world, and bring hope to the hopeless. And I honestly, there's, I'm a nurse and I've been a nurse for 30 years and I think that's a service kind of job, right? It's in the genre of healing and assisting. And it's always felt like I'm good at it and I enjoy it and I like it. And I think that, what happened in alcoholism is it interrupted or it pulled me from what is natural truth for me and in my core and my center of being, I'm created to be a service, to bring, to be helpful and assist. And and kind of returning to that, which felt good, 6, 7, 8 years old, with the stray cat or the puppy dog or, helping my little sister or whatever it was. There is a joy in service and helping. But the selfishness and self-centeredness will convince you that it's too inconvenient. Somebody else could do it. And what you need to do is focus on you.
Yeah.
I love this world we live in of self-care.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I tried that. Nearly killed me.
Yeah. If they got negative energy, don't let them around, right? What does it say? There's just a whole world of it.
Thing, but I hope not. I spend a lot of time in in homeless shelters and missions and with society's rejects, right?
Yeah.
I went back to school in sobriety to complete my nursing degree, and the school was downtown, and it was across from a homeless camp and services. There were a lot of resources in the area, so the area was kind of heavily populated with homeless folks, and we would leave class, me and these other nurses, and we would walk to get lunch. And this one day, I'm not exaggerating. We're walking, and the homeless guy, hey Amy, I said, hey, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. How you doing? Yeah, and we get a little further. Somebody else, we get to McDonald's, and the lady at the fry station turns around and yells, I got a job. And I said, man, I'm so happy for you. And we're leaving, and these nurses are looking at me. They're like, you're real popular. All among the homeless and
Nice.
the drug addicts. I am. You're not wrong.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. That's awesome.
But those are my people,
Yeah.
man. Those are my people, and a little bit of love goes a long way.
Hey, man, I tell you, we go to the treatment center pretty often, and I always ask, one of my favorite questions is, who in here has never attempted a 12-step program in their life, right? And they're always like 30 guys, some from the age of 20 to 60, you know what I mean, that raise their hand. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, I remember the days where I was thoroughly convinced I was dying drunk. Yeah. And because I'm like you, I was not I remember when I first read when I get in the big book, they talk about a spree. And I was like, what's that?
Yeah.
What's a spree? Like, I drank. That's what I did. You know what I mean? Like, I was the bottom of bottoms, right?
Spree indicates that it ended at some point.
Yeah. Which was never, right? Yeah.
It was like 10-year spree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just like, man, how did we get here?
I ask that question a lot too, with folks that come in for clinical services and treatment centers and stuff, and even people that are coming back to 12-step recovery. And I'll say, but there is a confusion, I think, that exists when people say, I tried AA, and I say, talk more about that.
Yeah.
Well, going to a couple meetings is not trying AA. Yeah. When I get down to the nitty gritty, I say, have you ever completed the 12 steps of recovery?
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, the answer is no.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because we're a 3 legacy deal, right? So going to a couple meetings, but in their mind, they will say, I tried it and it didn't work. And I think, well, I don't think you honestly tried. I don't think you came all the way in and sat all the way down. I don't think that, because they don't understand. And why would they, Charlie, you talked about Charlie Parker would say, how do we get upset with newcomers for behaving like newcomers?
Yeah.
I can't expect you to know what this is walking in the door.
No.
I didn't. I had been in AA. I had been sober, in the 90s for a period of time on fellowship. I never read the book and I didn't work the steps. But if you had asked me, I was in AA.
Yeah.
Because this 3 legacy program, there's many levels and depths to this, and specifically on the step work and the pursuit of this conscious contact, but they don't know. We think we've tried it. We decided we tried it. Like, we decide how many stalls are in the bathroom. We've decided, and we make decisions based on those decisions. That were never grounded in truth. And so kind of just bring in people in a way that allows them to experience what we are and what we're not. So then, and if you give this an honest go, we're successful. Rarely have we seen a person fail thoroughly.
Yeah. I love that.
And but there is, there's folks that have never tried it. They've never heard of it. Oh, my dad was in that. Oh, my aunt was. I think my grandma did that for a while, but this true experience within a 3 legacy program is truly incredible. But we got to, kind of dismantle some of those decisions they've made that can tend prior to investigation or this misunderstanding of what this program actually is. And how it operates, because it's successful.
Yeah.
If applied, it is successful.
Amen. It's funny because I ask those same questions right when I'm there. There's always a handful of questions I ask at the beginning every time I go. We've been going out there over 2 years now, and every Monday, but I always ask this, not only to who's never attempted a 12-step program, but then I say who's attempted a 12-step program, worked the 12 steps and stayed sober over a year. And then we add to it, we say who's worked the 12 steps, stayed sober over a year, and worked another person through the 12 steps, right? And
ooh, you're layering up, buddy.
Yeah, right. So here's
you're layering up.
here's the cool part about that question. And over 2 years now, I've only seen 6 people raise their hand to that.
Yeah.
And I mean, this
Yeah.
is like hundreds and hundreds of
And
people.
that's that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
The depths of this thing, like, because boy, you took it even further.
Yeah.
Have you taken someone else to the 12? There's something I've learned more about myself and program sponsoring than I could ever learn being sponsored.
Yeah,
There is an
absolutely.
experience in that is just incredible.
Changed my life.
Yeah,
Every day.
but again, you know what? That goes back to the altruistic movement. That goes back to the service, right? That goes back to being, because that's I have to be kind of prepared and positioned. So our recovery and our 12-step experience and the work we do is the preparation, and then the positioning is when we are able to kind of move into our design for maximum service and become that in this world. And it's incredible. It's incredible. I tell you, when I go out, I start the day, if I go out in the day to drive my business or figure out a marketing strategy, or look for investor, or how I'm going to get paid this month, or when I go out with self-seeking motives, I my day's rough.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated. It never goes as
Never
planned.
pans out.
I'm thinking, God, don't you love me? I'm doing everything right. I feel like Job. I want to feel something. But if I can get right, in the morning, and when I leave my house, think, how can I be helpful today?
Yeah.
Man, I have a better day.
Oh man,
I have a better day. I really do, and all the same stuff gets done. Or not done. What changes is how I feel and how my response to life. Because when I go out in an effort to pack into the stream of life instead of take from it, I mean, just that. But it's a mindset, and it's easy to kind of fall back into what I need to do, and what the calls I got to make, and the emails I got to send, and I got to do, and I get into those patterns of self-seeking, selfish, self-centered behaviors, and it's not comfortable anymore. It doesn't feel. I just feel like I'm wearing clothes that are too tight, or I'm bumping my head and snagging my coat on the hook all day, and. But if I can really kind of get into that position of humility and purpose, and leave the house thinking, smile at people, let someone ahead of you, be pack into the stream. Like, man, I come home skipping. It was a great day, and the same thing, I might have been cut off in traffic, hung up on, whatever. It just doesn't bother me. Because it's I'm just here to see what I can do to be helpful.
I love that. Yeah. One of my favorite sayings, it's God's world. I'm just here to help. Right. I'm just here to help. What does it say instead
just
of
kind of keeping that mentality, hanging on to that? Because the clamors, right? The clamors, and the calamity, the noise of the world. I can get distracted. I'm just glad that I have this program, like you said, that nightly review, and because I don't always spot check. I'm not always tense. I mean, Don used to say, like, if I'm leaving one area, walking to another, like when I leave for work and I'm leaving home. Have I screwed up yet?
Wow.
Was I nice in here? Wow. And then he would talk about kind of opening the door for God, kind of holding the door an extra few seconds, letting God get in the car or whatever, taking God with you throughout the day. And then leaving this meeting and going into the next, or going to lunch and coming back, or however my day is broke up, that those are times to kind of spot check.
Wow.
I tell you what, I kind of go into autopilot, and I may do that twice.
Sure.
But I'm not doing it, habitually. And sometimes I'm doing it after the fall,
Oh, yeah. I was fixing to say,
people are crying, things are broken, and I'm like, probably shouldn't, after the fall, I'll be like, instead of before. But I'm pretty regular on the nightly review, and it feels good. I tell you that the one I kind of get with is I told you about the fear, was I fearful? But also, was I thinking of myself most of the day?
Yeah.
I tell you what, my answer to that question really is, there's a direct correlation between what kind of day I had and the answer to that question. And if I can answer, mostly I was in service and I was helping this person or helping that person or seeing what I could. Man, at the end, I've had a pretty good day. But when the answer to that is like a resounding yes, it's probably been a crap day.
That's funny. I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love this. It's been awesome. Yeah.
I know. Look, we were gonna cut it an hour, and I know we're past that.
We're just hour and 4 minutes. Yeah.
That's okay, man.
Yeah.
It's I love
great,
it.
Yeah.
Because frequent contact with others, right? And frequent contact with newcomers. This is the stuff that turns a mediocre day into a great day.
Oh yeah. Connection.
So I appreciate you so much.
Yeah, appreciate you.
I'm excited about Don L next week. I'll tell you what, one of my favorite human beings is that guy.
Wow.
I'm gonna have to tune in next week to hear Don, or you let me know when that's out, because just a real down to earth, just a, I like relatable people in Alcoholics Anonymous.
He's awesome.
If I came into AA and you guys were too perfect, or didn't or weren't transparent about the flaw, like when I first started speaking, I was still grimy and dirty. I cussed all the time, and I was graphic in my descriptions. I mean, we used to have a saying in Louisville. We'd say we give it raw and uncut. And that was my dad. My poor dad. My dad was over 30 years before he died with 30 years in this program, and he'd be sitting there, and his sweet little girls up there just cussing and hollering to graphic, this crazy. And I'd get done, and Dad would say, "In a general way, Amy." Like, clean it up, and I would tell him, I said, "Dad, when I got here, and I would see women like Katie or Renee or Polly, I would see these polished, beautiful women up there. And the way I felt, I would sit in the back of the room, and I'd think, they're not like me." And so it's so important that we pull that curtain back just enough so that the newcomer knows, bud, I'm just like you. I've just been here a little while, And Don does that. Don does that in a way that I can understand, and I can digest, and I can interpret. And I love Don's message because it not only speaks to the newcomer, it speaks to the old timer. It's just universal. Just one of our great communicators, buddy.
Yeah, powerful. And you do a freaking amazing job with it too. Honestly, it's like,
well, thank you, sir.
And you also throw in the little heartfelt, like you'll get into some funny, but it kind of raw moments, and then all of a sudden throw like a little heartfelt thing in that just touches you. Like, wow.
Because, I love to laugh, and we like to make fun, and the laughter hooked me, I think most of us remember the first time we heard ourselves laugh in sobriety, and we were like, who was that? Like, we haven't laughed, the laughter kind of brought me in and made things relatable and fun for me. But at the same time, the seriousness of what we're doing is so important. It's like, we got to laugh. Life is not a veil of tears. We're not a glum lot, and all that thing. And I love that. And that brings me in, and it's kind of where I relate. But at the same time, I can't forget that, we are, we're on a life and death errand.
Amen.
And there's a seriousness to that it underlies all that we do, And like I said, I love Peter down for Peter talks about Alcoholics Anonymous, and he calls it the sacred place of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that always just moves me, man.
So special.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much. It's been awesome.
Oh, bud, it's been my pleasure. I'm going to bed feeling pretty good and excited, and it just kind of recommit. We need that. We need to know that they keep the main thing, and all the other stuff is just noise.
I hear you. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll stay in touch with you, and I'm sure we'll see each other over the next year or so sometime, and then. Also,
I'm sure I'll probably see you somewhere
in person. Yeah. And then also, it'd be cool. Like maybe sometime next year, we'll plan like another date or whatever.
I would love that. It'd be fun. I'd like to do that with you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Amy. Anything you want to finish off with?
No. You have a good night, man. Thanks for staying the course and being of service, man. it'd be a lonely road, right? If we're
Yeah.
the only guys out here. So
Amen.
thanks for walking with me.
Likewise. Thank you.
All right. We'll talk soon.
All right. Have a wonderful night.
Hello. Thank you for listening to 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings. If you enjoy our program, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share with a friend. We're also self-supporting, so feel free to contribute to the channel through Venmo at Recovery Recordings 615. Please note that the views expressed on this podcast are solely our individual views and do not represent any official stance of any 12-step program. We are not affiliated with any specific recovery organization, and this content should not be considered as professional advice for alcoholism or addiction.